Hey, my name is Gytis. I'm a UX designer and I've been using Figma for the last 6 years for my job every day. So this is second video of me trying to teach the Figma in the most practical way that I can think of. If this sounds new to you, then go and watch my first video on how to take a screenshot and start building something from scratch using Figma. If you're coming from the first video and you have already started building something from scratch, then in this video I'll show you how to add the images, add the colors, add the right typefaces, and make the final touches so that your designs look like the real thing. So let's get to it. In the second video, in this particular video, we'll go through this whole thing again and we'll just try to recreate this thing exactly as we see it. So we'll edit the shape and the colors and add images and icons and things like that. So without further ado, let's get started. So I might just, move it to the side for the reference. So maybe want to compare and contrast later on. So I'll move this thing out. Again, to move in and out of Figma, you can use the space bar. When you click space bar on this keyboard, you'll be able to move everything around. Hopefully you won't gonna get any motion sickness. And if you want to sort of zoom in or out, you can hold Control and use your mouse wheel to zoom out and then zoom back in. So that's how you kind of navigate around. Okay, so let's get to it. Now we want to start from the top again, and we just start to match it as close as we can to the original. So in this case, we probably are okay to use the same font because it's the same sort of sans serif font. And if you don't know what that means, then you can Google it. But essentially, when you don't have any sort of strokes and sort of fancy things around or the edges of the letters, then this is called sans serif. But if I, for example, try to find something serif looking, okay, don't really know. Oh, well, there we go. Okay, so this one would be a serif font because it has these little embellishments that are called serifs. So they actually have a proper name to it, which I don't remember at the moment, but essentially that what makes it serif or not. So Control Z to go back. We want to match it up, so we're gonna go with this, but we want to sort of have it smaller. So we're gonna select this control on the over here, and we just kind of move the number down, maybe something like that. Move it again to its place and then select maybe a different boldness. So that's medium, probably not bold enough. Let's go with semi-bold. Okay, that's something like it. Maybe it's smaller, I think. That's probably good. It's awkwardly 21, but it could depend on the actual font that you're using. So if you pick a different font, maybe a different number would appear, but general rule of thumb in terms of numbers used for setting the sizes and spacing between elements, that's usually an even number or an increment of 4. That's usually what you'll find, or although in the Mac or iOS world, they can just eyeball it for, however they like it. But when you're starting out, it's usually better to have some sort of rules. And the rule is that you usually use increments of 4 or 8. You usually start with 8. And then if you need something in between, you can, add 4. So that's why we have the spacings of, 16 all around here. It could be also, 20, 24, and so forth. So we've got the first one down. Now we have the search, which I want to make smaller as well. So it's going to be probably smaller than that, something along those lines. And then I want to choose a different thickness or different weight. And it's probably also, yeah, it's probably also semi-bold. So we'll go with that. And then obviously, as you can see, it has a different color. So we want to change the color of that, which we can find over here at the right where we see the fill. We click that and we can try to obviously find the color, using this color picker, which would be, kind of harder to do. A quicker way to do it would be to use an eyedropper tool. When you click over that, you'll have this tool, and if you hover over a particular thing that you're trying to copy color off, you can click it and it usually quite accurately selects that color. So there we go. Now we're obviously skipped the icon. So now we're gonna go to a website called Icons 8. And in here, we're just gonna search for the icon. So let's call it search. Hopefully we'll find something with that name. And this is just one of many websites that you can use to find, quickly find icons that you're using. And since the internet is quite slow, that's why it's kind of taken a bit longer for me to load it. We're looking for icon now. So I went to this icons8.com. I'll leave a link to it in the comments down below. And I would just search in for a search, because that's usually how search icon is called. Search icon. And, I just picked the one that I, seem to like, or the one that seemed to match the reference as best as I can see. And I just want to copy that over. SVG would be a greater or better format, but since that's a paid feature over here, we're just gonna go with the PNG. It's gonna be good enough for now. And then we're gonna go back to our Figma and I'm gonna paste it in. Voila, we've got our search icon. Now, as you can see, it's obviously much too big. So we're just gonna take one corner of it and we're gonna hold Shift and then drag it. So it kind of goes to being as small as the reference icon. I'm probably going to be even smaller than that if I had to guess. Roughly there. It's different icon, so it looks slightly differently, but for our purposes, it's good enough. So we're just gonna want to place it, again, eyeball it as best as you can. Obviously, it's a different color. And because it's a PNG, we cannot really change the color of it. If that would be a PNG SVG file, then we could definitely do that. But for now, we're just gonna have to stick with that. I want to make sure that it kind of is aligned to the bottom. So if I select both of these and I go to the right over here, I see that we've got these different align options: align left, horizontal, so on and so forth. But we're now interested in align to bottom. So if I click that, it does that for me. But it does not look actually like what I need, because the text itself, it has some sort of, it has a padding top and bottom. So when you're aligning it to the bottom, it does not really align it to the actual bottom of the text. So in order visually to do that, it's probably going to be better to align it to center, or sometimes even to the top. So that probably would be more aligned, but visually it's probably going to look better, like that. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And I don't want to mess it up, so I will select it and I will group it with a Command or Control G. Like that. And when I'm moving things around, I can see how it sort of stacks to this left element. So now it's sort of aligned to the bottom, and now it's aligned to sort of the center of it. So I think I'm happy with that. Now we've got this bottom text, which actually is fairly close to what we need, but I think it just needs to be smaller. So when we're making it smaller, it kind of moves in this weird direction. So I want to move it where I want it. For some reason, it's set to be on a different text align option. So I want to be text aligned to the left. And now if I move it, then it's aligning how I want it. Okay, so probably something like that. So we've got 16 here, which I like even numbers. One thing that we missed is this lovely line over here. So we've got it black and we need it much lighter. So we were gonna want to change the stroke color. It's not a fill color because it's not a shape that has a sort of, insides. It only has the border because it's a line. So it's called stroke. And if we select it, we can just move the mouse over until we get a similar dim shade of gray, which something like that. Okay, I'm happy with it. Text is there. We can sort of see if I click it and I hold Alt, and it will show me how far it's from the line here or from the square below it. So because I like even numbers, I will probably move it down so it's 24. I like that. Now let's tackle the squares below. Okay, so I can see that it probably needs to jump up a little bit if I'm looking at, to the example reference here. But I also want to make the numbers even. So it could probably stay here at 14. I think I would be all right with that. Now that I'm looking at it, I think the text here is a little bit... There we go. And it needed a little bit more weight to it. Okay. Now... Next, we probably want to match the text over here. So this is a group now, so I can either ungroup all of them. But in this case, we made it into a structure before, but now since I don't want to make a change to all the 4 because they will have all the same thing. So I will probably just delete all of these things and I will just fix this up, and then I will again sort of duplicate. So I can just ungroup it. You can select from the right, or I pressed Control Shift and G and that ungrouped it, and so I can select particular things. So I select this. I probably want to make it smaller, probably like that, and then I probably want to give it some more weight. I'm doing this purely from sort of eye, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be good enough. It's probably okay. Now we can see that obviously both of these are white. So I'll select both using Shift key, select one, then select the other. And then I will go and select different fill color. So it's going to be just pure white at the moment, just like so. And obviously because this is such a light square, you can barely see it. So just so we can see it better, I can just make it darker. And I will probably move it down as well, something along those lines, maybe up a bit from the edge. I want to really match it up. So we have 14 over at the bottom and 15 here. So I'll move it 1 notch here. Then we also have 4 between the two, which, it's probably actually not 14, but like 16. But I could, try and compare it like super duper, but usually it's, because it should be an increments of 8, then it's usually 8, 16, and so forth. So in this case, I'm probably going with 16. So I think I'm quite happy with this particular thing. So, right. So one thing that we're obviously missing is an image, but there's actually a cool way to add images. So I will do that a bit later. So now we'll just group it with a Control G, and then we duplicate it with selecting Alt Shift and move it to the right, and then select both, move it to the bottom. Okay, let's see what we have. We have 16 and this is 14. So I select both, move both of them down a little bit so it's both 16. We can obviously make it tighter because we have it tighter here. So we could do that. We could probably dismiss it, but well, let's make it happen, right? Let's make it happen. So to do that, I need to make this larger. If I just Control Z back so I can actually see what we have, I think it's probably gonna be something like 8 in between the elements. That looks something like it. So if I get that particular, spacing between it, I can select both, and then I can use this very cool feature, which is called K on your keyboard. And this is going into the scaling tool, which you can also find over here. And then if I click the corner and I drag it with a shift until I see this red line, which kind of matches, to the elements over here, then I will scale all of the items evenly to the dimensions that I need. So in this case, it kind of not exactly matches things up, but it's kind of getting it very close to it. So that's how I usually do it. And I would just go in here and then I would adjust so it's nice and even numbers. And so we've got the 8 in here, and then we've got 24 and 24 to the sides. Okay, so now we're pretty much there. So I select both of those, move them down to have it 8. Okay, so it does not snap it. So I usually select something, I move the mouse, I hold Alt, it shows me 11, and then I use the up and down arrows just to kind of put it in place, and it's showing me the dimensions real time, so I can do it real time. Great. Okay, so far so good. Now another great tool, if you have exactly sort of matching styles of the text, and I don't want to like copy over because I've already put in the right text, which I haven't, but let's say that I have. Right, I don't want to like delete it and then retype it and so forth. So I can select the text over here. I can click the right button and I can copy properties. Voila. And then I select the text that I want to adjust. I click right again, and I will want to paste properties. And voila, just like that. It took settings of this typeface, the size of it, what it is, the weight, and it just applied to that element as well. And in this way, I don't need to do as much work. There we go. And now we've got same stuff happening here. So we actually probably have same typeface weight as we had here, but just like a different shape. So in this case, we could because I'm lazy, I will just delete all of it, and then I will select with Control, I will select into this group, select this text, and then I will copy the properties. Then I will, with the Control, select this, and I will paste properties. And then I will do the same with this, copy properties, and then select this, and then I will paste properties. Smashing. And now I want to make this more visible, so I'll make it darker. Right, and I'll just want to match sort of the size, in terms of the placement of it. So it's not quite there. So I want to move it here, and then I want to move it up. So we've got 16 and 16 bottom and left, exactly as we had at the top, and then move this one down, so we have 4. So now we have exactly matching proportions and size. So I'm quite happy with this. And now we need to match the size of it. So another way for me to actually do it is I can click with a Control, just select the rectangle, just the rectangle, and I can move the side of it slightly until it snaps to the elements above it. So as you can see, that there are like little crosses appearing, and this just kind of snaps it, and so I know that it exactly has the same width as the top element. And then I select it, Alt-Shift to move it or copy it over, and then I select both, then Alt-Shift to move it down, and it snaps now to have those 8 pixel dimensions, and I do that again. And then voila, okay, that's looking pretty good. Now, we've got these 3 different icons, so I will not go into like finding the exact, exact, copies of these. So I will just copy the search icon so that, we have some sort of nicer placeholder. So I copy it over and I can just sort of move in that position. I can hopefully select the square behind it and I just delete it. Or I can just delete all of these, take it, move it until it kind of has this, again, red line, and it shows that it kind of centers. But if you want to make sure that it is centered, you can select both elements at the same time. You go to your align tools over here, and then you select center. Right, select both, and then select here. So that was a little bit out of center, so it did that for me. Okay, that's looking pretty good. That's looking pretty good. Obviously, the text is not as it is over here, but you can just double click into it and then edit it. No issue with that. And then you would just need to adjust it. But like in these cases, if you want to make sure that it kind of stays at the center, if you would text align it center and then delete the parts you don't want, voila, it just kind of jumps. Again, select center and then jumps nice, it stays nicely in the center. So that's pretty much what we want. We probably would like to have a color that is, matching that one. So I would do this, and it's actually probably not regular, it's probably medium, I think, or even actually semi-bold. Yeah, that's probably it. And we probably need to make these bolder as well. So, slight differences here and there, but they make up what we do. So we could probably also select it. It does a funny way of selecting because we have multiple things around it. So it's not as easy to select only the 3 elements here. So sometimes you just have to do it manually. So I selected both and I will group it with the Ctrl G and then group it again. And then I want to just make sure that it actually is somewhat in the right dimensions. That's probably right. Okay, so I think we pretty much have it all, except obviously having the colors and the images. So this is the fun part. Adding the images and actually making your design, come to life. So for the images, you can, go to Google, search for images and find them like that, and then copy it. Or, there's this great website called Unsplash that has, great images from, pretty much anything you want. You can just search for stuff, and then you can, take any image that you like. Maybe, I don't know, this actually looks quite fun. And then if I right click and then copy image, right, and I go back to Figma, then all you need to do is select a rectangle. You select a rectangle, and then you hit Ctrl V or Command V, and it automatically pastes that image in, and it pastes it inside of the shape. So you don't have to sort of, match it up and things like that. That's sort of the easiest way to do it. And, let's say we want a different image. So copy this particular image, go back, again, select only the rectangle, and then, paste it in. Voila. And then maybe another one. Okay, these are obviously completely random. If you want to make a greater effect, you would probably want to make it a little bit more purposeful and have some sort of theme going on. But, for the purpose of this, that's good enough. And voila. Okay, so with images, as always, one thing that you need to really watch out is making sure that the text is actually visible. So even though we've pasted these lovely images in here, we can see that the text is not really, very easy to see. So a fancy thing that I've done doing this is, even though you may not have observed it at first, we've got a second rectangle on top of the image that is acting as a sort of dark gradient. So it starts darkest at the bottom and then kind of lightens up as we go up, and this will essentially allow for any image that you put in, you'll always have the darker sort of spot over here at the bottom, so that the text, which is white, is more legible and readable. So this is a little bit fancier, but I'm sure we can do it. So if I again select the rectangle and I want to copy and paste it, so now we have two rectangles over here, right? So one is on top of each other. So this is at the bottom, this is on top of it. And now we want to, this is an image now, but what we want to do is we want to create a gradient. So we go into our fill settings over here. And then we want to select, instead of fill, or instead of image, we want to select a linear. Voila. Okay, so as you can see, it added this, thing over here. So that's a sort of linear gradient. And now we just want to sort of select it in such a way that we have the bottom, being the darkest part and then the top being the lightest part. So as you can see, this particular place is now white. So we want to, probably keep it white, but we want to make it transparent. So this is the transparency control over here. And I want to make it probably completely transparent, and I will select the other thing, which you can see also, being sort of blue selected, and I will want to select, black to be black. And now you can't see anything because the transparency is also, set to 0. So if we bring the transparency up, now you can see that we're starting to see the text much better, and it kind of works in subtle ways. So the tricky part here is to select a gradient in such a way that it does not affect image too much, but it makes the text much more visible. So, it's probably something around that. I've got like 62%, let's say. And if I just, get out of this one, and, it's probably okay. It's that you could probably fiddle it a little bit more with it, make it, more transparent or less transparent, things like that. But I think it's, compared to other things, it's much, much, much better. And so now we want to replicate this thing. So obviously I'm a lazy person again, so I will try to do it faster. So I use Control to click straight onto that rectangle over here. And then I want to copy it. So let's say that if I copy it, and then if I'll select this rectangle, and then I paste it, it just pastes on top of it. So it pasted just above the image and below the text. And then I'm just gonna do that for the rest of the stuff. I click straight into the rectangle, so straight into this group, and I select rectangle, and I paste it. Select and paste it, and there we go. It's much better now. So we've got the images pretty much nailed down. Now we've got these lovely colorful gradients going on. So it's gonna be quite similar to what we did with the gradient over here. So we're gonna select this thing, we're gonna go into the fill, and I'm gonna go to linear. And again, we've got our linear controls, on both sides. So it doesn't really matter now what sort of colors we pick, but we can sort of try to match it up a little bit. So we've got some orange, stuff going on. And then I select the other thing, and it's probably going to be sort of like a more yellowish thing going on. Maybe something like that. And now, as you can see, the gradient moves not as I wanted, and it also kind of fades away over here. So let's fix the fading. So if I select here or I select here, I will take the transparency tool and we'll move it so it's 100%. And then I'm go back. And then I want it to be sort of going at an angle. So I can, quite easily just select this, take this particular part and I can just move it. And then I take this and I can move it, right? And as you can see, it's pretty much there. We probably need to adjust the color. Something, like that. And this probably has a little bit more red to it, And if I click out of it, that's pretty much it. And that's how you can create, multiple gradients. So again, I'm quite lazy, so I'm not going to do, different colors for each of these. So I will just copy the property of this onto other stuff so we can see how that looks. So I can copy properties. Again, I've just had this rectangle selected, and using the control, I'll select only that. And then I'm gonna paste properties just like that. And even a quicker way to do it is using shortcuts. So you can use Ctrl-Alt-C and then Ctrl-Alt-V to do exactly the same thing. Since we already copied that over, I can select it and then Ctrl-Alt-V, select it, Ctrl-V, and there we go. And voila, I think that's pretty much it. Obviously, some of you might notice that we don't have these lovely rounded edges here, so we can just, by selecting the whole frame, and we go into this corner radius thing, we can either adjust it using the sort of slider thing, or I just use my up and down arrows. If you want to move it quicker, you can hold Shift, and it will sort of do it a little bit quicker and just adjust to the best of our liking. And there we go. So that's pretty much how you do it. So hopefully in this video we've learned how to really fiddle with the different settings of the text, how to edit text, how to change the color, how to add images, how to make sure that the images are, you can see the text over the images by adding a gradient. Hopefully you now learn how to add color gradients and change the direction of those, how to add icons, and and that's pretty much how you do it. I think that's a very a sort of big part of what we do, learning just to use these basic tools of creating shapes, adding text, color, images, making sure that the spacing is right. That's a good chunk of what we do. And obviously in this case, I could just, sometimes I cheat, and if I'm doing something really quickly and I just want to make it as accurate as possible, I would just take the screenshot and I would just create on top of it. Just add text and so on, like completely on top of it. That way I can just kind of go through it quicker. But I think that when you begin to do or something like that, to use Figma, to learn the tools, I think it's really great to use your eye to kind of try to match it up. And while you're doing it, you're not just going to learn how to use tool, but you're also going to learn how to spot, the spacings and try to really use your eye to, find the details, find how these designs are made. And it's just going to give you some interesting insights as you go along. So I definitely encourage you to go about this way. Take a couple more screenshots. You can either go to my website to find some interesting applications and projects, or you can just go to Behance, Dribbble, Google or whatever, and you can just find things that you like. You can grab, screenshots of websites or of applications or wearables. It doesn't really matter. The tools and techniques we've used today will apply exactly pretty much the same way to any different format or thing that you are doing. So take these as main principles and try to apply it to as many things as you like. And as you can see, Figma is fairly simple tool to use. You don't need to know all of the fancy features of it, but as you grow, as you get fancier with it, when you try to create something of your own, then you can start, learning about these additional things that you want to do. Thanks for watching the second video for this Figma tutorial, or how to learn Figma the quick way. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't done that already, and I will be releasing more videos about Figma and how to practice it, what you need to know in order for you to build great designs. So let's stay in touch.